Evening. Welcome to the inaugural Women's History Month exhibit. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the members of the 325th Celebration Committee, along with the subcommittee members for their invaluable contributions to the research and authorship of the 20 biographies displayed around Nevins Hall this evening. I want to personally thank Jessie, Nicole, Kevin, Brigitte, Elaine, and Renan. All of them helped with the bios tonight. Additionally, I want to thank Renan for designing the poster boards that highlight the 20 exceptional women being honored in this inaugural exhibit. We could have easily honored double or triple the number of women in this exhibit. It was difficult to choose those featured tonight. We want to start tonight's ceremony with a land acknowledgement, and I want to welcome up Anna Tucker, who is the co-chair of the 325th Celebration Committee.
As we celebrate 325 years of history, diversity, and vibrancy in Framingham, we take a moment to acknowledge the deeper roots of this region. First, we recognize that the city of Framingham is part of the ancestral homelands of the Nipmuc, the freshwater people. We acknowledge the historical legacy of colonialism and racism by honoring and respecting the land. We likewise acknowledge and honor the traditions of all people indigenous to what is currently known as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, including the Nipmuc, Pinnacook, Pecumtuck, Mohican, Massachusetts, Nauset, and Wampanoag peoples. This event is part of a year-long celebration that highlights Framingham's unique journey, from its establishment in 1700 to its dynamic, diverse present. Together, we honor the past, celebrate today, and look forward to the future as one community. Thank you.
I'm just going to say a few words about tonight's exhibit. Tonight we honor Nancy Dowd, who authored the screenplay for one of my favorite sports films. We also honor Margaret Knight, now predominantly featured in the Smithsonian and nicknamed the female Thomas Edison, for her ingenuity and perseverance as an inventor. We also honor Krista Corrigan McAuliffe, who grew up in Framingham as a Girl Scout and reached the stars. But most importantly, we go back to our past in the 1700s and we honor Sarah Clays, who escaped persecution in Salem, only to be welcomed in Framingham. Some of these names mentioned may be familiar to you, while others you may not be familiar with. I encourage you to take a moment after this ceremony to learn more about each woman featured here tonight. It is essential to highlight the accomplishments of women in our community's history, but even more important today, considering what has happened in our nation's capital. Last month, the Framingham 325th Celebration Committee unveiled the city's inaugural Black History Month exhibit. And tonight we're unveiling the Women's History Month exhibit. But since January, the federal government has been eliminating the accomplishments of Black Americans and women from its websites. More now than ever, it is important to celebrate these individuals who helped shape our country, our Commonwealth, and our city. More than a century ago, women were denied the right to vote. This exhibit highlights the achievements of the first woman elected to the Framingham School Committee. In 1874, Annie E. Johnson was elected before women even had the right to vote. Among the remarkable 20 women featured are the first female selectwoman, the first female police officer, the first female firefighter, and 2 former state representatives, as well as 2 suffragettes. Their contributions have paved the way for future generations. Framingham suffragettes Josephine Collins and Louise Parker Mayo were dedicated champions of women's rights, firmly believing in the vital importance of ensuring women's voices were heard and to be counted. They protested in Boston and in front of the White House, and they endured imprisonment for their convictions. Despite these challenges, they remained resolute in their cause, fighting for unwavering passion. In recognition of their sacrifices, they were awarded jail pins, and they wore them as badges of honor. Today, women must continue to advocate passionately for their rights and support one another in this ongoing struggle. Perseverance remains essential. Women's perspectives are invaluable in every setting, and it is essential to recognize that women's rights are fundamentally human rights. Women need to support women. Women need to be invited in and their voices heard. It is noteworthy that this marks the first anniversary committee to be chaired by women. All of the previous celebration committees were led by men. I would like to express my gratitude to the mayor for selecting Anna and I to lead this year's celebration. And now I welcome the Mayor of Framingham, Charlie Sisiski.
Thank you, Susan. Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
In case you didn't know, the astronauts landed at exactly 5:57 this evening. I can't imagine what it's like to be floating around in space for 8 months in zero gravity, thinking that you're only going to be there for 8 days. Never packed enough toothpaste for 8 months. I don't know how they did it. But anyway, I'm honored to be here tonight to celebrate the contributions of women in Framingham. This new exhibit highlights 20 remarkable women from the town's 325-year history and their impactful roles from the 1700s to today. Throughout Framingham's rich history, women have played pivotal roles in shaping our community, whether through advocacy, leadership, innovation, or service. Their stories, often untold or overlooked, are vital threads in the fabric of our shared history. This Women's History Month, we not only honor the past, but look forward to a future where the legacies of these incredible women continue to inspire generations to come. My administration is committed to continuing this exhibit annually, adding new women to be recognized and celebrated each year. And it's with great pride that I introduce to you today someone who continues to make history in her own right, a leader who has championed women's rights, social justice, and equality through her career. Please join me in welcoming Senate President Karen Smilka, who will deliver tonight's speech.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that kind introduction. And it's great to see all of you. What a nice audience. It's just great to see all of you here celebrating this, and it certainly is worth a big celebration. I'd also like to thank and honor the 325th Celebration Committee and Anna and Susan for this year's co-chairs. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you for your work for this. Thank you. It's important. It's a real honor to celebrate today, to be here today as we celebrate Women's History Month, and to do it right here in Framingham. The home of women who have shattered glass ceilings in our community, across the state, and around the country. As you heard some of the bios, and I took some time, and please make sure before you leave to read the bios of some of the women who are being honored today. I didn't know everything about all of them, so I learned a lot, and it was great, and I'll tell you in a minute why it's even more important to me. But I want to thank the mayor, the city legislature, state representatives Jack Lewis, Priscilla Sousa, Kate Donahue, and I see some of the city council members here. I see Phil, and I know that there are others, and I want to thank you all for being Janet and Bruno, thank you for being here. It's, again, a celebration of community here. One of my favorite quotes, and this probably is my favorite quote, I have to say, about the fight for our rights, women's rights, came long before we started even celebrating Women's History Month. It came from a woman who I believe was far ahead of her time, Abigail Adams. In a letter to John Adams, her husband, she wrote, and I quote, "Remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors were. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could." Yeah. If particular care, this is the part that I really love, if particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion. That's the quote that I use quite frequently. We are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have had no voice or representation. Abigail was pretty feisty, even for her time. She knew, as well as we do, representation matters. But whether by accident or design, the achievements of women who came before and after Abigail are often overlooked or minimized. It is something that I have to say I am reminded of every single day when I walk through the State House walls, whose walls are full of portraits of old white men. But women's history is Americans' history. It's America's strong history. And we lose the opportunity to appreciate the full scope of our nation's history when we do not share and celebrate women's history. So much of that history is right here in Framingham. It is Meta Fuller, the first Black woman sculptor of national acclaim, who pushed the boundaries of art. It is Krista McAuliffe, a teacher, astronaut, and pioneer whose courage and vision inspired generations to dream bigger and continues to inspire generations to dream bigger and to reach for the stars. It's Barbara Gray, Mary Murphy, Dr. Jean Avery, and each of the women being honored here today. We must continue to tell the stories of those who came before us and who continue to inspire change. Because representation does matter. I have to repeat that. Representation does matter. Perhaps even more now than ever before. It matters that young women see themselves as astronauts, advocates, and leaders. And it matters that they know that they have a place in shaping our collective future. When I was elected Senate President back in 2018, the walls of my office, and some of you have seen this, and I invite all of you to come visit to see, the walls of my office were fitted with portraits of the past Senate presidents. Naturally, pretty much all of them were men. I'm the 95th Massachusetts Senate President, and they were up in the big suite where I have a lot of meetings and in the entrance foyer. And pretty much all of them, except for one, was a white man with the mutton chops, and they were all men. I'll leave it there. I felt they were a little creepy, to be honest with you. It's true, it's true. If you saw them, you would have agreed. You would. It was important. They were influential men, clearly, especially of their time, for sure. But they, in fact, did not reflect the full diversity of individuals that have helped build Massachusetts and make Massachusetts as wonderful a Commonwealth and as wonderful a place to live, raise a family, grow a business, and be. It did not feel very welcoming. So if you come to my office today, you will see that every single photo of a past Senate president has been replaced and placed over by a photo of a woman. This year, we're ending this symbol, this session. This past year, we had all women of color who have contributed in some way, some positive way, to Massachusetts history. This was the second year. We had last week a farewell to what we call the Women on the Wall, her story of women who have made a positive and significant difference in Massachusetts. You'll see Donna Summer, Coretta Scott King, Melnia Cass, astronauts, Netta Fuller is there, and many other women astronauts, sculptors, cabinet secretaries, and so many others. And we are getting ready to put a third version up for Women's History Month, trailblazers and women who have made a big difference, who have sort of challenged the status quo, because it does make a difference. I have to say, a few months ago, we had a young group of women of color come to the office, and they looked on the wall, and one of them, literally with tears in her eyes, said to me, "I have been here several times before. This is the first time I see myself here." And that really was important for me to hear. I believe every single resident of Massachusetts should feel welcomed and see themselves through the halls of the State House. And that's why they are up there, because when young women and people of color visit, they deserve to see people that look like them, to know that they are being celebrated as well. Faces of strength, courage, and brilliance. We have also put in, just to mention, a statue, a bust. When I came into the Senate presidency, we renovated the Senate chamber, and there were 9 busts, also all male. And granted, some of them, Lincoln, my favorite, Washington, Franklin, Henry Wilson from Natick, of course, went back in there after we celebrated. But I left 2 of the alcoves empty. One of them now has a bust of Frederick Douglass, first person of color in the State House and the Senate. The second alcove I left empty to put in a bust of a woman. There's never been that in the State House. 1797, the State House was completed. And I reconstituted the Senate Art Committee, which is going through the nominations. We had a public nomination process. People could go online and nominate a woman who they believe should be in that alcove. We will make a bust of a woman to take the place there, to help celebrate, because it's really important, again. And so I don't know who will be there, but again, I'm hoping that we will have the bust in by next year's Women's History Month. So feel free to come visit. In a moment when some political demagogues at the national level are trying to take us backwards, it has never been more important to celebrate the women who have shaped our world, because our fight, our rebellion, Abigail Adams' rebellion, continues. We have made incredible strides, but we all know there is still a lot more to do. We still face barriers in government, business, science, and beyond. We're still fighting for equal pay, reproductive freedom, political representation, even bodily autonomy, and all of that continues. And we know that women are still underrepresented in leadership positions across every sector. We're happy that we have now a woman governor, lieutenant governor, and some constitutional officers, and I'm proud to be a woman Senate president here in Massachusetts, the state that I love. So the rebellion that Abigail wrote about 300 years ago continues today in each and every one of these fights. And we will not stop until we see a world where women are not just included, but leading in all areas of our lives. Because we know that progress happens when women have a seat at the table. And sometimes when we're denied a seat, we just bring our own. So as we gather here tonight to celebrate her story in honor of the spirit of resilience, determination, and vision of the women that shattered ceilings here in Framingham and around the country. And we celebrate every woman who carries that legacy forward and continues Abigail's rebellion. Thank you very much and enjoy this celebration.
I at least want to first give a shout out to Senate President Karen Spilka. I was part of her Youth Advisory Council when I was a senior in Framingham High School, which was also the year that I started the Youth Council here and led me on the path. And I thank her for giving me the chance and showing that no matter how young you are as a woman, you are always included. You should always push and always jump the barriers. So I'm proud to have a Senate President who stood up for me and is the reason I'm even here in the first place and giving me a chance. In 1885, Miss Proctor moved to Framingham. You can see her portrait to my right, my left, my right, and lived with her sister, Miss C.W. Coolidge. For the Framingham Bicentennial Celebration in 1900, she wrote the following poem named Framingham. As this was written in 1900, there are a few modifications in words. Fair to the Nipmuc were Framingham, when deer were plenty and salmon swam by Merrimack west to Sudbury River, and the brooks that wind where the tall reeds quiver. Up from the sea to the lakes that lie, pleasant and cool, the pine woods by, when the Bowery steams, where the beavers write, and blue where the eagles sunward flight. And only the wind, or the wolf, or the moon, broke the slice at night or noon. Ah well, not hunter, nor chief, nor maid is left by the falls where the forest laid. Their weirs, their cornfields, their paths, their graves are gone from the meadows the river laves. Yet Washacum, Cochituate, Knobscot Hill speak of their old dominion still. A resolute, reverent race were they who up from the coastline made their way to the woods and meads of Cochituate, strong of purpose and stern of fate, for present good and for future bliss. And I to both words they wrought in this, building the meeting house, bridging the ford, fighting the natives and fearing the Lord, and bitter the deeps they sometimes crossed. Empress, a wife, and 9 children lost, murdered and captured, the record ran of Thomas Eames when the town began, and Fowler Montlade, where the Christian fame, heard the war whoop and saw the flame. That the hamlets here, the wilderness, were a refuge to those in storm and stress. Rough was the road to Salem then, but hunted women and helpless men fled through the forest's darksome door. From the witchcraft horror they swam the shore, and Salem End was a nook of peace, where from courts and prisons they found release. Good Parson Swift on the sunny swell, where stood his meeting house, slumbers well. Yet they say, at midnight who ventures there may hear his voice in appeal or prayer, ring out as it did when the dead and he lane where parish and preacher anciently, and a psalm float by, but the sounds they hear are the sighs of the wind in a dreaming ear. For pastor and flock on the sunny swell, where stood the first meeting house, slumber well. And now 200 years have fled, but the men of Framingham, living and dead, have been true to country and state and town, winning in war and peace renown. And her sons in Manila and Cuba still are brave as the soldiers of Bunker Hill, and her daughters as loyal through weal and woe as the wives and mothers long ago. Fairer and nobler in Framingham than in far-off days when the salmon swam, up from the seas to the lakes that lie, pleasant and cool the pine woods by. For the toil of 2 centuries make, at their close, the wilderness bloom and rejoice as the rose. With the fortunate south to a city growing, and traffic and life through its highways flowing, with the center charming and lawns and leas, for homes and rivers and stately trees, with busy, beautiful Saxonville, queen of the falls, the lake, the mill. A region of loveliness, thrift, and cheer is the town in its bright 200th year. And while Cochituate mirrors the sky, and over Washacum the west winds sigh, while her churches rise and her hearth fires glow, in strength and honor may Framingham grow, and forever the Bay State's diadem, with virtue and valor and beauty gem.
This concludes our program. I hope that everybody will stay and look at the posters. We also have an Equal Rights Elixir mocktail, and there are pastries in the back as well. Thank you.